Well, grace to you and peace from God our Father and our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. Today we're finishing this June and July worship series on the transformation effect. And all of which to say that transformation is at the heart of what God does in our lives. And we could be talking about transformation quite a bit. We only kept it to 9 Sundays. Today we're going to finish things off as we think about what does it mean for the church to be transformed. What is that all about? You see, I grew up in the church. I have never known a time in my life when I wasn't in the church. And the church has been a good thing for me. When I was in college, when all of my other friends were sleeping in, I still went to church. Largely because I had a job in a church and I was paid to go to church on Sundays. Now, I know that some people have bad experiences with church every once in a while. I've heard the stories, and I know that they're very real and painful stories. It just hasn't been the case for me. For me, the church has been a positive place. All of which is to say, that's one of the reasons why I became a pastor. Because I wanted other people to experience what I experienced. That connecting with God through the church can be a healthy, fun, exciting adventure. And that's been my prayer, as a pastor, to see how that comes about for individuals. And I think the church can be that. And going back years and years and years and years, I came across a letter last week. I have no idea who wrote this letter, though it was written to a guy by the name of Dionysius, and it's in the year about 200. Now think for a moment about the year 200. The Roman Empire is expanding, and trade routes are opening up. And people are getting a chance to travel literally from Spain all the way into current day Iran. And people are beginning to talk about their faith and their particular gods from their regions, and there's all sorts of conversations going on, and in the midst of it all, there's this small group of people, and they're called Christians, the church. This guy writes this. I'm assuming it's a guy who writes this. It could be a woman, but I think it's a guy. He writes, the organization of their community, that is the church, does exhibit some features that are remarkable, even surprising. For instance, they obey prescribed laws, but in their own lives, they transcend the laws. They are misunderstood and condemned, yet suffering death, they are quickened to life. They are poor, yet making many rich. Lacking all things, yet having all things in abundance. They are dishonored, yet made glorious in their dishonor. Slandered, yet vindicated. They repay slander with blessings, and abuse with courtesy. For the good they do, they suffer stripes as evildoers, and under the strokes they rejoice like men given new life. Jews assail them as heretics, and Greeks harass them with persecutions. And yet, of all of their ill-wishers, there is not one who can produce good grounds for this hostility. Well, it goes on, speaking about this amazing group of people who, because of their faith and because of their hope and because of their joy, are able to deal with negative situations with love. They're different. They're transformed people. And together, they're seeking to transform the world. And you know what? They do. I want to be a part of a church that is deeply committed to transforming the world. And if not the world, at least the small corner of it from which I live. I want to be a part of a church that makes a difference. I want to be a part of a church that brings light to darkness, that speaks up against those who are experiencing injustice, that welcomes the unwelcome, and that believes to its core that the good news of the gospel is the best news this world has ever heard. The problem is, the church doesn't do any of those things. People do. people in the church do. It's people who carry the light of Christ with them wherever they go. It's people in the church who believe that the gospel is not only true, but powerful and eternal. It is people in the church who have become change agents in their community and in the world. And that's the exciting part. That's the part I want to be a part of. But the other part of that is also true. It's also challenging. Because people can be stubborn. People can lose their way. People can get disinterested. People can lose their focus. So make no mistake. If you have been baptized, as Austin just was, if you show up at church worship every so often, if you identify yourself as a Christian, then there is no room for wiggle. You are in the transformation business. You are in the transformation business. You see, that's the message that Jesus had for this woman that he met at the well. Who was this woman after all? She comes to the well all by herself. She's an outcast. No one wants to hang out with her. Why is that? A lot of people have assumed it was because she was a prostitute. We always like to think sexual issues about people, don't we? And maybe she was. Or maybe she just was the victim of making bad decisions and hanging around the bad guys and getting herself into trouble. Whatever the case, she's an outcast. She's also a Samaritan. And this is a big deal. Because Jews and Samaritans did not hang out together. To a Jew, a Samaritan would be in current day like a Muslim to a Jew. Or like a Democrat to a Republican. Or you know it's coming. Or like a Dodger fan to a Giants fan. They're enemies. They didn't hang around together, especially if you were a Jewish man. And Jesus breaks the rules. He asks for a cup of water. And she says something like, well, let me get this straight. You, a Jew, are asking me to give you a cup of water? It's like, don't you know the rules? We Samaritans don't hang out with you. We're not even supposed to talk to you. She's only repeating what she has known her whole life. That there's a separation. That Jews and Samaritans don't get along. And Jesus, you gotta love what he does. He comes right back at her. He doesn't back off at all. And he says, yeah, but there's a time coming when Samaritans and Jews are going to worship together. Jesus says a time is coming when the barriers will be broken down. It won't be you worship over there and we worship over here. It won't be separation of people between the good and the bad, between the righteous and the heretics, between us and them. No, all together. And this blows the woman's mind. Jesus tells her then, well, go call your husband. Now here's the problem. She doesn't have a husband, right? And the guy she's with is not her husband. There have been 5 others in her life. And Jesus cuts right to the core. And he wants her to be honest. He wants her to get real. Jesus does that in our lives. He has a tendency to put a mirror to our eyes and to our lives and to our souls so that we have to look at ourselves and to be honest with ourselves and to get real, which means it's real hard. For those who are in 12-step groups, you know that the hardest thing is to be able to come to grips with the reality of what your life has done to other people. Nobody likes to get real because it's to come up with the messes that we have and to recognize that we've blown it. We've made so many mistakes. But Jesus tells us without judgment. There's no lecture. He just wants this woman to be honest, to tell the truth. Because here's the truth. She was not made to be a receptacle for men. No, she was made in the glory of God to be valued by God and by others and to carry within her the good news. So here it is, love incarnate standing in front of her, the source of her freedom, the hope of her future, inviting her to break free from the shackles that have bound her, to be welcomed now, to be loved now, to be transformed. And she says, that's okay, no thanks. Actually, she wants to keep the lie going, doesn't she? She says, well, you must be a prophet. And then, for some unknown reason, she wants to talk about worship again. She wants to talk about how everyone is a little bit different here. And how we connect to God, well, it's all a matter of your background. Jesus is not going to play this game with her. Now, I would have shook her from her shoulders and said, would you wake up? Would you recognize what's taking place here? But Jesus doesn't do that. Again, calmly and softly, he moves her back to reality and says, you know, it's about spirit and truth, not the material world, not what other people think of you, not the way that you measure your life or the success or the failure. No, it's about spirit and truth. And the truth is this. You're coming to the well at the hottest time of the day all by yourself. Why? Because you're hiding your shame. Well, it's time to let go of that. Because the Messiah is standing right in front of you. And the Messiah happens to think that you're worth it. Pow. That's it. It's a moment of transformation for this woman. It sinks deep and it hits hard. And she's a different person. And she runs into town and she tells other people what she just experienced. And everyone listens to her, because why not? A woman with this reputation, who begins to speak about grace and mercy and hope, wouldn't you listen to her too? The whole reason I think this story is in the Bible is to remind people like you and me that to be a part of the church is to be in the business of making a difference, of transformation. And it happens people to people. Lives to lives, telling the truth and loving others. It's not about a program. It's not about an awesome worship experience. It's not about a missions trip. People to people, lives to lives, telling truth and loving others. That's the key to what God is up to in the world. And in thousands of places all around the globe this very moment, God's work of transformation is taking place, people to people, lives to lives, telling the truth and loving others. Maybe you've read the book, same kind of different as me. If you've not read this book, I'd encourage you to add it to your summer reading list, at least what's left of the summer. Powerful book, true story. It's about a guy by the name of Ron Paul. Ron is an art dealer in Dallas, Texas. Very successful. Rubs shoulders with the elite in the art world. Married to his wife, Deborah. They have 2 kids. Every Sunday, they go to church together. Now, truthfully, Ron would just sit in church. It really had no impact on his life. He might as well be home changing the oil in his car. But that's where he was. And slowly, ever slowly, he began to see his life kind of spinning out of control. Making silly decisions, having confused values, not being the person that he knew that he should be, all to the point that one day he confesses to his wife that he's been having an affair. He tells her this with the hope that she would say, okay, fine, we're going to get a divorce. That's really what he wanted. But she didn't say that. She said, we're going to work on this. His whole world gets rocked by a woman who is committed to him in love and shows him forgiveness. Not an easy thing to do. And they go through counseling, and then she rocks his world again when she tells him that they need together to go into an inner city and work at a mission where homeless people go and people who are addicted to drugs and who are living on the streets. You see, Deborah had been hearing from God that he wanted them to go into this mission and to make a difference in the lives of others, and that they needed to do it together, because she believed firmly that because of their presence in this mission, something amazing and beautiful would happen. So, Ron kind of begrudgingly comes along. They volunteer at the Union Gospel Mission downtown Fort Worth, Texas. And then Deborah has a vision that there is a man at this mission, somebody on the street, who is going to rise up and be a really important contributor to the transformation in other people's lives. So one day they're in the kitchen, and this angry man comes storming into the dining room, a big black man. And people run from him for fear. He's an imposing individual, a frightening person, and Deborah leans into Ron and says, "That's the guy. That's the guy that God is going to use. Now go make friends with him." Well, because Ron loves his wife, he tries to be friendly with Dallas Moore. Dallas Moore, a sharecropper from Louisiana, an ex-con, somebody who's been hardened by life on the street, by life with drugs and alcohol, and he is having none of Ron. But at Deborah's insistence, and she was insistent, Ron kept on trying. Slowly, very, very slowly, Dallas begins to warm up to Ron. He's leery. He's afraid that this white do-gooder from the suburbs is going to play him for all he's worth. Dallas has a conversation with Ron and says, "You white people, when you go fishing, you do something called catch and release." He said, "I will be your friend forever, but I'll stop if you catch and release me." And Ron pledges he's going to stick with him. And this relationship slowly gets tight. And Ron learns about Dallas's life, not just the life that he's lived on the street, but the life that he lived down in Louisiana as a sharecropper. And then Dallas is given an opportunity by Ron to develop the character that's inside of him. At one point, Ron gives Dallas his brand new pickup truck, and he has him drive 3 states away to deliver valuable goods. And Dallas does that. Nobody had ever trusted Dallas like that before. My point in telling the story is that through and through, it is a story about transformation by grace. Person to person, life to life, speaking the truth and loving others. God to Deborah, and then Deborah to Ron, and then Ron to Dallas, and then Dallas back to Ron, and then Ron and Dallas together as they touch the lives of hundreds, if not thousands, of street people in Fort Worth, Texas. Lives that were once misguided, morally bankrupt, off-center, disenfranchised. They become something by virtue of the grace of God, which lives up to the vision that Deborah had. Beautiful and amazing. This past week, our staff had our annual retreat over at the coast. It was 65 degrees there every day. And we decided to move Christ Lutheran Church to the coast. And we hope you come along with us. We start the day, we end the day with devotions. And the devotion that Lynn Forgy led on Wednesday was a really cool devotion. He reminded us that the focus of the church is not just about getting people into heaven. It's about introducing them into a relationship with our God who begins salvation now and walks with us through all the adventures of life so that we very slowly begin to see the grace of God at work. He quoted from N.T. Wright, who was an Anglican bishop. He quoted from N.T. Wright's book, Surprised by Hope. And Wright said that our job is to invite people into a life of salvation right here, right now, so that heaven is happening here on earth. Sounds sort of like something Jesus would say, huh? Actually, Jesus did say that in the Lord's Prayer. But I wanted to quote this morning a little bit farther from N.T. Wright's book. What you do in the name of the Lord is not done in vain. You are not oiling the wheels of a machine that's about to roll over a cliff. You are not restoring a great painting that's shortly to be thrown into the fire. You are not planting roses in a garden that's about to be dug up for a building site. You, strange as it may sound, even almost as hard as believing in the resurrection itself, You are accomplishing something that will become, in due course, a part of God's new world. Every act of love, gratitude, and kindness, every work of art or music inspired by the love of God and delight in the beauty of His creation, every minute spent teaching severely handicapped children to read or walk, every act of care and nurture, comfort and encouragement for one's fellow human beings, or for that matter, one's fellow non-human creatures, and of course, every prayer, all Spirit-led teaching, every deed that spreads the gospel, builds up the church, and makes the name of Jesus honored in all the world, all of this will find its way through the resurrecting power of God into the new creation that God will one day make. And that, quite simply, is why I find life in the church so deeply exciting. And I hope you do too. Because it's about transformation. Changing people from one creation into a better creation. And that's the good news of the gospel, and it's the power of the resurrection. We'll never get it perfect. We'll always be in a state of becoming. But as we keep our eyes on Jesus, as we stay committed to being what God wants us to be, the church can be a very good place to be. Will you join with me in prayer? God, it begins with your word, your speech into our life, giving us, great God, a vision and a passion to be change agents in this world. Lord, what ministry would you open up to us? What area of life needs attention? What injustice needs to be confronted? What individuals that are lost need to be saved? Oh Lord, give us that vision and that passion that we might be your church here on earth and for all eternity. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. The peace of the Lord be with you always. Thank you. I invite you to rise and share the peace of Christ with those who are near you.